Hey guys, my name is Tommy. Welcome back to another episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit, where we remind ourselves the first rule of all tabletop RPGs. Bring plenty of snacks, so when we obliterate someone with our overpowered character, we can give them something to prevent their overwhelming saltiness. Today, Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit takes a bit of a left turn. Over the course of the last few weeks, we've been talking about how to optimize our player characters. Today, I want to give a little bit of love to our GMs. We're going to crack open a bestiary or two and find some monsters that are able to swing well over their challenge rating, monsters that have special abilities that cause them to be a little more challenging than everything else in their CR group, in an effort to make sure that our optimized party is challenged by equally optimized monsters. Now, before we break out the monsters, I want to make a couple of points clear. First off, challenge rating is an entirely arbitrary system that is only as effective as your players are, especially at higher levels. Once we start getting our capstone abilities, really powerful magic items, once we figure out how to make our characters tick, it doesn't matter if the monster we're fighting is a CR 5, 6, maybe even 7 or 8 above our effective challenge rating. Rock always crushes scissors. And in that same way, something without a lot of armor class or something with not a lot of hit points still dies to the Ubercharger who comes riding through, taps it with his lance, and we watch it explode. The second point I want to make is, as a GM, you have the right at all times to take any monster in any bestiary, anywhere at all, and stack anything on it to make it as powerful as you want or need it to be. If you want all goblins in your universe to have ability scores averaging around mid-30s, that is your prerogative and you may do that. If you want the most challenging monster in your universe to be a wolf, give it 50 barbarian levels. There's nothing stopping you from doing so. It is entirely your prerogative, and thus, these monsters I'm about to present may not be the most powerful thing you could possibly do. Now, with that out of the way, let's dive right in. First up on our list is the Pugwampy Gremlin from Bestiary 2. I spend a lot of time flipping through the bestiaries, looking at art, looking for really challenging monsters, things like that, and every time I come across the Gremlins, I never really stop and read them. I just see a cute little ugly thing with a low CR, and I write it off completely. I feel like a complete idiot in retrospect, because the Pugwampy has a special ability that allows him to mess with parties all the way up to level 20 at his measly CR1/2. Pugwampy radiate an aura of unluck out to a radius of 20 feet. Any creature caught in that area of unluck must roll 2d20s whenever a situation calls for it, such as an attack roll, a skill check, a save, and must use the lower of the two. Essentially, in 5th edition terms, a Pugwampy gives everything within 20 feet of it disadvantage, period. This effect doesn't work on animals, other gremlins, or gnolls, and anyone under the effect of a luck bonus is immune to this unluck aura. However, unless we're looking at something like a war priest with fates favored, or perhaps a halfling, most players aren't going to have a luck bonus. Making the players have disadvantage on every single roll allows this CR1/2 creature to fight well above its weight class, and in higher level play, there's nothing saying you can't have a pack of gnoll barbarians or gnoll rangers with a Pugwampy in their backpack to get up in melee, give everybody disadvantage, they're immune, and thus at an advantage over everybody else. If you're not into gremlins, gnolls, or animals, a simple way to add a Pugwampy to any encounter is to give all your monsters a luck stone, which grants a +1 luck bonus on all saves, which makes the bad guys immune to the Pugwampy's unluck aura. It also allows your players to get a pretty sweet item after that fight that every single solitary class can use. Moral of this story: never take a tiny, dog-faced, ugly-looking fae for granted. Two other really powerful ways to challenge our players at low levels are the ghoul and the shadow. In addition to the disease that ghouls spread on their bite, they also can paralyze non-elf humanoids for 1d4 plus 1 rounds, which means if we have a party that hasn't really buffed their fort save a whole lot at lower levels, a pack of ghouls thrown at them can easily turn into a party wipe, because when you're paralyzed, you can't defend yourself. And when you can't defend yourself, something can coup de grace you, meaning you get crit. If you survive that outright, which you might not at low levels, you must make a DC 10 plus damage dealt fortitude save or die outright. A pack of ghouls paralyzing the party and then coup de grace-ing them can rapidly turn into a party wipe. And if we have a party full of a bunch of, say, arcane casters that don't have high fortitude saves, the CR1 ghoul can easily shred through them with this ability. Another great way to challenge our party is to throw shadows at them. When we look at shadows, they don't seem like they're a whole lot of much, and oftentimes we'll forget about these guys in favor of things like vampires, liches, grave knights, things that we believe pack more of a punch. When a shadow attacks you, an attack that targets our touch armor class, most often the lowest armor class on your typical player, they deal 1d6 points of strength damage, the greater shadow dealing 1d8 points of strength damage. A creature dies if the strength damage they take from a shadow equals or exceeds its actual strength score. In addition, these guys have a fly speed and are incorporeal. These guys can go through walls, swim through the floor, swim through the ceiling, and just pop up, even if it's just pop their hand up. And if a humanoid creature is killed by this strength damage, in 1d4 rounds, they become a shadow themselves. In last week's min-maxing for fun and profit, we spoke about strength as a dump stat. If a player in your game dumps strength, or you're playing with a bunch of wizards or rogues or something like that, stick a bunch of shadows on them. Even at high levels, some characters, like the heavy armored fighter, will not have a crazy high touch. The shadow can easily take these guys out, or at least drain them as they go through the dungeon to fight scarier things further in. And don't even get me started on if one of your players decides to wander off alone. Anybody familiar with the Jade Regent adventure path? Once upon a time, I used the city of Kasai as a sort of mini dungeon, and the party's arcanist decided to wander off on her own into the part where 5 or 6 shadows jump out and ambush the party. Needless to say, she didn't last very long. Another thing that can be great to throw at players, especially players with optimized armor class, is swarms. Swarms don't have to hit to do damage, rather they just have to end their turn in an opponent's square to deal automatic damage. 2 swarms specifically, the Leech Swarm from Bestiary 1 and the Tick Swarm from Bestiary 2, can provide devastating TPKs despite their teeny tiny size. The Leech Swarm has a special ability called Blood Drain, which says that any living creature that begins its turn with a Leech Swarm in its space is drained of blood and takes 1d3 points of strength and con damage. No save. Even after a couple rolls of this, the players are going to have to stop and recalculate their hit points as their constitution is drained. Now, of course, there's nothing stopping somebody with a big weapon from just clearing these leeches out in a couple of swings. However, if you put enough of them in a dungeon, or God forbid, put some at the bottom of a pit with some illusory magic to cover the fact that they're there, the amount of damage these guys can do can add up really fast, and thus, even at high-level play, exposing our optimized characters to something like this can, best case scenario, help level the playing field, worst case scenario, turn into the death of a couple of players. Now, if we don't feel like making our players track all this con damage, the Tick Swarm from Bestiary 2 at a CR 9 is another great way to dish out a world of hurt. When compared to the Leech Swarm's 2d6 plus poison, something we're not quite as worried about, Tick Swarms deal 46 damage and bring forth the bubonic plague. That is not why we're here, though. We're here for the Cling special ability. Cling says if a creature leaves a Tick Swarm's square, the swarm takes 1d6 points of damage to reflect the loss of numbers as ticks cling to the surface of whatever left that square. A creature with ticks clinging to it takes swarm damage at the end of its turn each round unless they spend a full round action making a DC 20 reflex save to remove the ticks from their body. This means that our swarm that usually only takes up 1 square essentially takes up several, and if our players aren't stopping making that reflex save to pull the ticks from their body, stepping out of the square that is covered in ticks does not save them from 46 points of damage every single solitary turn. This CR9 monster, for this reason, can easily do damage to a high-level party, and thus, if you need to hit somebody who's got super optimized armor class, swarms are what we're looking for. Another wonderful way to bring death to our players is to drown them. A character can hold their breath for a number of rounds equal to twice their constitution score. If they take a standard or full round action, the remaining duration that the character can hold their breath is reduced by 1 round. After that time, the character must make a DC 10 Constitution check every round in order to continue holding their breath. Each round, that DC goes up by 1, and when they fail, they start to drown. The first round, they fall unconscious and go to 0 hit points. The second round, they go to -1 hit points and are dying. And one round after, they die. How do we get our players into the water, you ask? I've got 2 answers for you. At mid to high levels, a shipwrecker crab from Bestiary 3 can easily get the job done. With a CMB of plus 36 and a grapple and a reach of 30 feet, a shipwrecker crab can easily pull players off ships, pull them off the beaches, pull them off walls of a coastal city, wherever it is they might be hiding, and pull them down into the deeps. And as they're trying to struggle to free themselves from the claws of this vicious beast, they'll be burning up the rounds they have before they start to drown. If the shipwrecker crab can get them far enough underwater as they're trying to swim up, unless they've got some kind of shenanigans, the movement will provoke an attack of opportunity, meaning the crab gets another chance to grab onto the player in addition to doing 2d8 plus 21 damage. If that wasn't good enough for you, Bestiary 1's Kraken certainly will be. Krakens have an extraordinary ability called Tenacious Grapple, which says they do not gain the grappled condition if they're grappling with their arms or tentacles. This CR18 monster has a CMB of 38 while grappling, and a wonderful special ability that we talked about in our Forgotten Race review on the Caecilia called Jet. Jet allows them to move backwards as a full round action at a speed of 280 feet. They must move in a straight line, but one thing I think it's important to remember is that backwards is relative when we're underwater, and if the Kraken is oriented to where forwards is up, backwards is straight down. A couple rounds of successfully using Jet after grappling a player or two means these players go several hundred, if not several thousand feet below the surface of the water, meaning that not only do they have to worry about attacks of opportunity from a Kraken they're trying to swim away from, they also will have to swim many feet to reach the surface of the water, and unless they're particularly strong swimmers, if the Kraken gets them far enough under the water, they're not going to make the journey back to the surface. Now, the last monster we're going to talk about today has a bit of a story with him. In a recent Pathfinder game that I just finished up, though many characters in the party were optimized, one of them, a Draconic Blood Rager, was outshining everyone with his overwhelming Vital Strike attacks. Though I did not mean it to come out this way, Bestiary 1's Baylor proved a perfect challenge for that whole party, including him. So picture this. You've got 5, 6, 7 characters, all level 20 plus, charging across the World Wound, needing to get inside the World Wound to complete a task, and several Baylors come out to attack them. Now again, while everybody in this party is somewhat optimized, there are some characters in this party, namely this Draconic Blood Rager and several Uber Chargers, that are just outshining everybody else. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. These Baylors are dying to these player characters in 1 or 2 hits, and the beautiful thing about a Baylor is when it dies, it explodes. Anything within 100 feet of a Baylor, unless they make a DC 33 reflex save, takes 100 points of damage, half of it being fire, half of it being, hilariously enough, we figured out against a half Brass Dragon, unholy damage. So these Baylors are dying, Uber Chargers are Uber Charging, the Vital Strikers are Vital Striking, and it rapidly becomes a problem for that party because everybody else who's struggling to keep up is taking all this damage from exploding Baylors. Now, a smart party will eventually probably learn, maybe take a step back from the Baylor, but if we put them in a nice, let's say 100 by 100 cage, parties have to learn to strategize incredibly fast. And this is why I say, though a Baylor at CR 20 is normally the capstone for certain campaigns, if you've got a lot of high-powered characters, or you're taking a game past level 20 and need something to really challenge the party, a Baylor will do that. Oh, by the way, any slashing weapon a Baylor wields has a 5% chance to just lop off your head. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of GMs out there that have great TPK stories, or stories of monsters that swing a little too high, maybe almost creating an accidental TPK that gives your players the chills up to this day. If you do, be sure to throw them in the comments, like and subscribe for more videos. Our next min-maxing video drops next Wednesday.